Welcome to a new edition of the Neon Jazz Interview Series with veteran jazz drummer, composer, and educator Harvey Sorgen. He opened up about his newest 2019 CD called New Origin with Christopher Rocher and Joe Fonda, and what kind of touring activity is going to take place. This musician is striving for a lifestyle unfettered by his own limitations and is always grateful to have created honest music over his career with the likes of Hot Tuna, Ahmad Jamal, Paul Simon, Dewey Redman, and so many others. He's content these days, and he is always looking to move further on his journey. So please get to know him and dig this interview, my friends.
Harvey, thank you for taking a minute out for Neon Jazz, man. I appreciate it.
Sure, Joe. I appreciate the time that you're allowing, and looking forward to speaking with you.
Absolutely. So let me talk to you about this album. I've had a chance to really listen to it, and there's a lot of great sounds going on. It's called New Origin. I want you to talk to me about what the artistic vision for this project was.
First off, Christophe Rocher, who's the clarinetist on the record, is a true master of the instrument. And Joe Fonda and I, the bass player, met Christophe a number of years ago and came to a concert we were playing. I think it was either in France or Belgium, and we discussed the idea of getting together to play. We got together here for a minute, and then we had a few concerts that were booked around France and Belgium for the two of us. It's really, besides for his expertise and fluidness in the language that he uses, it really does come down to that word language. This music is really about conversation and creating sound where no one really is the melody, no one's really the harmony, no one's really the groove, so to speak. It's all one, and we're speaking in the moment to one another about what's happening with us and our surroundings and the people that are there. We did this record probably in about, we went into the studio and recorded for about 4 hours and let tape run and then see what we came with. There are a number of compositions written by the three of us, by Joe Fonda, and also by Christophe on the record, that are kind of different in the way they approach one another. But the overall theme behind this is really developing the language between the three of us. And that's very important to me with improvisers, almost with anything I'm doing these days, whatever ensemble, whatever trio, whatever genre of music, having that way of speaking with individuals. The way I kind of look at a lot of this is I'm all about playing, almost any type of music, as long as it's with musicians or thinkers that are committed to a sound and have their own voice. And I really believe that Christophe and Joe really do have a very defined voice. When I listen to them, knowing these guys for so long, that I could tell right away that's Christophe. I could tell right away that's Joe Fonda. That's what's really important to me in improvising, whether it's playing, straight ahead jazz, idiomatic, or R&B, or whatever it may be. Yeah. So that's kind of the vision.
The thing about this album is this is not going to be a traditional jazz album that people are might be used to in a lot of ways. There's levels of it that's avant. There's things that people probably haven't heard before. What do you want the end user or listener to get from this experience with this album?
There is a large segment of the left of center jazz community worldwide that do live in this world. I guess what I'd want them to get from this is being able to open up their ears, not have any preconceived notions, and be able to sit down and live in frequency for a minute. I mean, really take a minute. I find that in a lot of things, people put on so-called jazz, so-called traditional jazz records or ensembles, and they're sort of engaged, but it sounds so familiar in one sense. They're not quite as engaged as they could be. I like to say that this type of music and other recent records and trios, such as the one with Marilyn Crispell that I have, it's about allowing yourself a few minutes to sit down and see what it says to you. It says different things to different people. There are things you can latch onto. There's, in the New Origin record, there's definitely a dose of intensity and strength. And there also is quite a bit of beauty and melody in there also. I'm hoping that people don't pigeonhole certain things when they hear it and say, oh, that's out, or that's straight ahead, or that's funk, or whatever it may be. And are able to enjoy it sonically. And I've said in the past, you don't have to love it. You don't have to. Beauty is it's very subjective. There are a lot of things that are incredibly beautiful, and we all tend to put our own parameters or bookends on what that is. But there is a lot of beauty in things we may not be necessarily exposed to.
So you had mentioned before we really officially began that you have projects in the works, you have live shows. Give me an idea of activity that's going on in your world now.
Sure. There are there's a lot of things going on. I'll just mention a few. Oh, this trio with the New Origin Trio, which has some shows around New York and Denver in July, and then we'll be in Europe end of October through the middle of November for a more extended tour. I have a new record out with the pianist Marilyn Crispell, beautiful, beautiful historic pianist, with Joe Fonda also, and we also have some shows around the New York area in June, and then we'll be traveling in October, beginning of October, out west to some festivals in Edmonton and Seattle. I have a quintet, the great piano player in New York, David Lepedo, where we're doing a number of concerts coming up with Ed Neumeister and Lucas Pino. I have a relatively new project with the guitarist Joel Harrison and Ralph Sturm, another guitarist, and the bass player Steve Rust, that's sort of being guided by the music of Ralph Towner, who we all kind of spent a lot of time with as young men back in the day with that music, and have recently revisited that music and just see how beautiful, amazing that music is. And so that's a new project that has some concerts and a recording date booked for August. Those are I guess if I have to think what's in the forefront of the charts that I'm printing out and the airplane reservations being made today, those are the ones that are on my mind this week.
Cool.
So, yeah,
sounds busy. So give me an idea of how did your jazz journey begin? How did it all start for you, and how has it kind of evolved over time?
Well, I started playing quote-unquote jazz and rock, and also rock and roll at a very young age. It's interesting. I don't make a tremendous distinctions between styles of music. Like I said, it really goes for me that what I was affected with, whether I was into the music of the Allman Brothers and the Grateful Dead or Anthony Braxton, to me they all had a very similar way of dealing and playing, which was you knew right away who these folks were. There was really spontaneous improvisation that went on through all of that. I kind of, as a kid thinking about being involved in, Allman Brothers music and Grateful Dead music, I mean, both of those bands had two drummers. And I used to try to play both of those parts. So that, I would have to say that's kind of like my introduction in one sense to learning how to open up on the kid a little bit. Not away from, but also adding to just playing backbeat and stuff like that. I also had a encounter when I was very young, 13 or 14, with Jack DeJohnette at a master class I was invited to, which was fairly life-changing to see him play in a room about the size of my small studio for 2.5 hours solo was pretty life-changing. I had no idea that the instrument could be played like that. And we've gone on to be good friends, and we've played music together, and he's turned me on to certain things. He turned me on to gigs with Ahmad Jamal later on, and yeah, it's funny being involved in that music, the rock music as a young kid, and then becoming a little older adult and getting in Hot Tuna and playing in Hot Tuna for 10, 12 years, getting a chance to play with all my childhood heroes, whether it be sitting in with the Dead or sitting in with the Allman Brothers, J-Mo sometimes would like to take a minute off and get up there and play with those guys and Santana and that stuff. And it's all kind of the same thing to me. And it went on. I had an ensemble with Dave Douglas and Mark Feldman that recorded a couple of records, and just kind of got into a way of not only playing time, but of really trying to find my own voice, which, I'm still working. We're all still working on that and being true to your own voice. And it just felt like a language. Playing jazz really felt like a language that worked for my body and my soul. It just felt right. And being able to communicate with other musicians on the bandstand and the people that were around us was very natural and felt like a place I wanted to be.
So, are you happy with where your career is at right now? You got a new album out. You're clearly very busy. You've done a lot in your career up to this point. Are you satisfied?
Satisfied. If we have to put it in those type of terms, I would have to say yes. I have a fantastic life. I have a beautiful family, a wonderful life, live in a beautiful place, play music that I like to play, eat wonderful food, get to travel the world. Could be a whole lot worse. Absolutely. I'm pretty ecstatic about my day-to-day life. We're all trying to stay healthy and keep it going, and the experiences that I have had that I've been able to bring to my family and my friends around are unmatched. That to me is the most important thing. And my wife will remind me sometimes. We get up and have coffee in the morning when I'm home and look out at the mountains. It's very gorgeous here in Woodstock. And we'll just look at one another and say, we have an amazing life. I have beautiful instruments to play. I play with wonderful musicians. I'm pretty happy. I try not to get involved in that competitive thing of who's got more gigs than who and who's higher profile and this and that. And I sort of take it all in. I don't separate out my playing career or my devotion to the music from my devotion to my family and to the life we lead on a daily basis. I think that's a really good way of dealing with certain political situations in the world around us, because it is worldwide. If we all can try to find a place where we can function out of love, joy, happiness, contentment, be vigilant, but also recognize what we can bring individually. Everything is local. So,
without a doubt. So everything's going to come down to this. Everyone has a perception or their version of who they think you are. Your family, your friends, your fans, your colleagues, but you know yourself best. Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? I'm hoping. Who do I think I am? I think I have. I have a sound. I mean, are we talking musically, or my ability to mow or my ability to mow in straight lines? Yeah. I feel that I have an individual voice that I'm constantly working on, that I'm trying to keep saying, and I feel that any situation that I can get into that allows me to speak, and I use that word in a much broader sense other than just words, makes me feel like I'm a part of the community, and I mean the worldwide community. I'm hoping that people stay away. They haven't in the past necessarily all the time from pigeonholing. I find I've been pigeonholed. Oh, he's the cat with Hot Tuna. Oh, he's the cat that played, with Dave Bellows. So he's the cat that played with Joe Fonda. Or he's the cat that played with the Allman Brothers. And, different people can get very different perceptions and pretty narrow perceptions. And I don't know what I can do about that other than just continuing on and trying to be as honest to myself as possible. Am I always as honest to myself as possible? No. That's the journey. That's where I catch myself and say, okay, stop, And I don't mean just having to cop the gig and whatever the gig calls for, being able to do it. That's part of the craft of playing the instrument, and I'm a true believer in that. I also feel like I want to feel that the people around me, the people I come in contact worldwide, are there because it's me. I used to have an old thing I used to say to folks, and cats would call and say, hey, man, I need a drummer for something. Are you available? And I would say, you need a drummer? I got a book with like 20 great drummers. Let me give you their numbers. Oh, you're calling me. So I have to assume that I'm hoping that you're calling me because you want what I offer to your music. That's the journey. That's I wouldn't say struggle, but that's the work I maintain in my life, to be as honest to myself as possible. We all fall off the bandwagon, but that's the centering thing for me.
Right on.
In my music, my music and how I relate to people and how I relate to the garden and everything. They're all connected. I always feel when we start divesting of different things, and the music is this and this is this and that aspect is not, you're kind of missing it. Bring it all. What do you have to bring? Bring it all to me.
I like it. That's a great answer. That's a great way to wrap everything up. Harvey, thank you for taking a minute out to talk about New Origin and your life in music. I really appreciate it. And good luck with everything.
I appreciate it very much, Joe. Thanks for your time, and looking forward to us meeting at some point when I'm out there.
Thanks for listening and tuning in to another Neon Jazz interview, where we give you a bit of insight into the finest players in Woodstock, New York, Kansas City, and spots all over the world, giving fans all that jazz. And thanks to Harvey for his time, his music, and his cool. If you want to hear more interviews, go to Famous Interviews with Joe Domino on the iTunes Store. Visit neonjazz at youtube.com. And for everything Neon Jazz all the time, go to the neonjazz.blogspot.com. Until next time, enjoy the jazz, my friends.
Neon Jazz.